Hey team, welcome to a Tuesday team huddle. Um, I'll come up with some cool hashtag or something like that to better title these. But um, as kind of outlined in the in the description in the original announcement or earlier announcement, today's topic is widely debated in all areas of fitness and sports performance in regards to what so many refer to as core training and as I put in the post, I mean I did put it in quotations because it is a bit of a is a bit of a I don't want to say unicorn, but it's one of those things that the term gets thrown around a lot, but no one's ever really been able to agree upon a set definition. Um, those that use the term, have their understanding of it, but if you say core, depending on what circle you're standing in, you could get um, completely different, definitions or responses about it. And so, uh, today I'm not going to sit here and argue what somebody else says or doesn't say or what they agree with or propose or whatnot. It's just more, I guess, kind of addressing more the athletes in regards to how they approach it. And I guess the best way to kind of kick things off is, um, a conversation I had with an athlete a while back, and they said they were finishing up with their quote unquote core training, and then they commenced to doing um, about 10 different variations of crunches. And so the question was kind of asked, all right, well, what is your core? And they're like, well, it's it's this, it's that, and they started naming off 4 or 5 different things. But yet whenever we started to kind of dive deeper into, okay, well, if that's what you say it is and here's what you're doing, then you're not fully training all that. If you say that your core are your abdominals, your hip flexors, your glutes and everything else, and all you're doing is crunches and sit-ups and twists and whatnot, well, you're completely missing out on the other half of what you're referring to as your core. And the second half of that conversation with the athlete was around, okay, you're sitting there and you're doing crunch after crunch after crunch. I forget what their goal was, 200 or something like that. And I said, all right, got them up on their feet, and I said, now, do a crunch, and they kind of hunch over, fold the trunk a little bit. I said, now, at what part of your game, and this was a basketball player, I said, at what part of your game has your coach ever taught you to be in that position? And they kind of stopped, scratched their head a little bit, and they said, well, never. I said, why is that? And, go through all the reasons, right? Head down, body's not in a good position, you're in front of your feet, blah, blah, blah. And so, that kind of started the whole idea of, okay, well, if you're saying that you're training your core, what is the best way to do it? Is like, you could sit there and train biceps all you want, but if you're not sitting in your competition, actually, flexing your elbow, multiple times or whatever, is it really applicable to what you're doing in your competition, right? And so that's why I really like and really appreciate, really respect. There's a few coaches that actually refer to it as, they refer to it a little more, um, maybe broadly, I guess. They use the term trunk stability, right? Now that it doesn't limit it to flexion or extension or anything. It's just stabilizing the trunk, because essentially, with our athletic movements, with our competitive movements, the way that we want to and are expected to move in our competition, in our training, that's exactly what that quote unquote core is expected to do, to stabilize, right? Our stabilize that and be that link, that connection between the upper and the lower extremities. All right, you don't want to get to a point to where, and I think we talked about this last week, or yeah, last week with our agility, right? Is that you want to be able to stay nice and rigid whenever you're going to make that cut. You don't want to have to, you don't want your upper body to kind of fold in because it's so weak it can't control that momentum. right? Same kind of thing. If you're moving in that forward direction, you see this all the time. I don't know if this is true or not, but I certainly use the reference a lot with athletes. As you see athletes run, and coaches have different terms that they use to describe it. Some call it kind of chicken pecking, or whatever you want to, whatever term you want to label it. But as they're running, they get a lot of flexion at the shoulders, maybe a lot of extra movement with their head and with their neck. Uh, I, I always kind of refer to them as, hey, we do one sprint as a team, and I can tell you who does quote unquote ab day or who does core training uh, as hundreds of sit-ups and crunches and that sort of thing, because when they're expected to stay upright, to stay rigid and stay strong, right, their body is so accustomed to doing this over and over and over that when they hit those high pressure, those high force situations, that's what their body is going to revert to, right? They haven't worked on or trained themselves to stay in that upright, kind of elongated position, which is going to be more beneficial and more transferable into the movements that they need or want to accomplish um, with their actual sport movement. I mean, uh, look at running backs, for example. Yeah, they like to get a shoulder fake here and there, but whenever they go to make those cuts, right, or they're accelerating, I mean, everything from the waist up is just, I mean, it's locked and in place. You watch, and I always kind of encourage athletes to watch Olympic sprinters. You don't see a lot of twisting and turning in the shoulders. You don't see, a lot of cross or transverse movement in the upper body. And of course, a lot of those guys, yeah, they might be doing, some sort of abdominal work, um, but it's probably not crunch after crunch after crunch. Not to mention, they're sprinting so much that they're exposing themselves to those higher forces, and they're helping, or they're encouraging their body, their midsection to stay rigid, because trying to run at top speed while your body's hunched over, there's just so many mechanical issues that's going to come up. You're going to shorten your range of your hip, and you're going to elongate the hamstrings, and everything else along that chain. So of course sprinters are kind of I guess what I would almost say are the pinnacle of athletes who understand that importance. Now, you know, you can argue that team sport athletes have to be a bit more fluid because, maybe they're trying to pass or tackle or something along those lines, and that's fair. But, again, if the goal is to get faster, then, you've got to be able to uh, segment those movements and control that movement, right? If you can't control it, I always use the comparison of, of course, high school, college students. You throw out whatever the latest sports car is. Hey, I'll give you the keys to it. You can drive it as fast as you want, but oh, by the way, there's no brakes. All right, you hit the brakes, they're not going to be there. You know, you still want to drive, and most of the time they say no, no, like, yeah, it'd be cool, but I'm not risking my life. It's like, well, that's exactly what you're doing with a lot of your quote unquote core work is you're not teaching your body how to control those high speeds or those forces, and then therefore whenever you go to make a cut, your upper body can't stay in place, can't stay aligned over your feet, whatever it is, and then everything just looks like, it just looks like a baby giraffe. We say sometimes they're just wobbling all over the place. So I mean, that's enough of the background of it, and I'm sure everybody's kind of, the big question is, all right, well, what the heck do we do, right? Um, and I mean, you can see behind it, we've got suspension trainers, right? So all types of suspension training exercises, whether it's posterior or anterior, flies, rollouts, if you're flipping over, if you're chest up or supine, um, then maybe doing your wise tees, anything that's going to force you to keep that body alignment. I always say kind of shoulder, hip, ankle alignment. It is going to be good. We've done videos in the past. I think it's on the YouTube channel about the ab rollouts. How how so many athletes, they might be they're going to quote unquote feel the burn, right? But they kind of miss out on that extra, maybe extra level of engagement or extra level of contraction, because whenever they roll back, they allow their hips to break, right? And it's that pulling motion as you're coming back, you want to be able to stabilize. So I'm not set up to demo it right now, but I mean, you can check out the video on YouTube and see how maintaining that push-up position as your arms are curling or pulling that, the dolly, the wheel, whatever you're using, pulling it back in. That for me, that's a great example of it, because your body is having to create that stability here so you can generate that force and pull back underneath. Another reason why doing dumbbell pullovers on a bench, with your spine perpendicular to the bench, forcing your glutes to engage and maintain that alignment, that position, is super critical, right? And again, it's about kind of getting that extra level of engagement and contraction. Another popular exercise, obviously, the planks. I think that those became kind of a fad word there for a while, and you're getting down to the 5-minute challenge, 10-minute challenge, whatever. Um, you know, it's definitely something to aim for, but in terms of athletes, it, very rarely are you ever going to be asked to hold that type of position for that long in your sport, right? So if we're talking about specificity, getting the transfer, then you got to think, okay, well, how can I challenge this movement, or anti-movement, in a way that's going to be more beneficial, for my activity, for my sport. And this was, I actually learned from a mentor of mine a long time ago, Andre Volstead, about, I think he called it co-contraction planks, or something. I forget the term. But essentially, when you get into the plank, if you imagine pulling your elbows towards your toes, but also trying to pull your toes up towards your chest, um, and you just feel that extra contraction, not just in your abdominals, but also in your lats and everything else, right? Which are all part of that quote unquote core that everyone refers to. Now you're getting a much higher intensity, a much higher level of engagement and contraction. No, you're not going to be able to hold it for 30 seconds or 1 minute, but you're getting a higher intensity uh, rep, right, or a higher intensity movement for a shorter time, but you rep that out, right? So let's say that you do a max squeeze or max hold 3 to 5 seconds. You rest for a few seconds, then you go again. You do that 4, 5, 6 times. Your level of your work rate is going to be a lot higher than if you just hold a plank at 50% for 30 seconds, right? So that's something as well. Getting into the dynamic planks, or alternating planks, right? So raise one arm, raise the other arm, um, you know, raise one leg and then the other leg, or opposite leg. So you're holding a plank, right arm, left leg, left arm, right leg, and you see athletes start to teeter totter and twist and rotate, right? Talking from a rugby perspective, as soon as I see that, and I always kind of coach our athletes, hey, if you see an opposing player, who as soon as they get 1 foot off the ground, you see them dip. I think wrestlers are great with this. Is you feel somebody's momentum or weight shift, boom, and then you can get in and take advantage of it. Maybe that's a little more judo than it is anything else. Is manipulating their momentum, but those are things that we really try and emphasize with the athletes in terms of that trunk stability, right? Again, you don't play the game like this, and you don't play the game like this. I mean, maybe if you're a boxer and you're trying to protect yourself, but you don't spend the whole match right there. And I guarantee that from this position here, you're not able to throw your strongest punch either. So, so again, in terms of quote unquote core training, and I'll continue to either avoid using the term or always put it in air quotes. Um, right? Think about how this applies to the sport and to your actual movement activity, right? Um, and then start to find ways that you can train it to where it's more applicable to your sporting movements. You see on the other side here the bands on the rails that we've got them here about or for Pallof press or even anti-rotation, being able to have the band uh, parallel with the shoulders, right, holding it out, and you're trying to fight that resistance. Uh, see so many athletes, so many young athletes, especially that struggle with that. They can sit there and do crunches for days. They can beat me to 100 sit-ups, by maybe 20 seconds. But again, you put the slightest resistance on them in a rotational, direction or something like that, and they just snap real quick. Something else that I've really enjoyed, and getting to the end here, so this will be my last point, but something I've really enjoyed that has also been kind of a big eye opener for athletes is overhead jogging, taking any kind of object. It could be a light medicine ball. Don't go too heavy, right? Maybe even just a ball itself. A lot of athletes are using rugby balls, basketballs, something that's going to keep a good distance with your hands and with your shoulders. But do some running, do some jogging with the ball extended out in front. Do it up overhead. And as a coach, it's great to observe because you start to see all those deficiencies start to pop out, right? As soon as players get out here, right, either the ball is doing a lot of this, or their legs don't work right. Their legs are dropping and driving in different directions, especially once you go up overhead. Uh, Obviously, athletes with shoulder issues are going to struggle with it. But once they get up overhead, you'll see a lot of shoulder twisting and turning. And again, as we've said before, right, that's just going to be minor energy leaks that, if they're trying to move in a forward direction, their shoulders are twisting and turning, that's just speed, and that's just power that they're losing in that forward direction. So once they get to the point that they can maintain that position, which the arms extended overhead is going to help recruit those trunk stabilizers in a much more useful fashion. Once they get comfortable with that, that's where you can really start to see a difference in what I refer to as their movement efficiency, right? Minimize those leaks. It becomes a lot more stable, and not to mention, like, we've actually used that in a few instances, especially during this quarantine period. Use overhead jogging as a finisher. You'd be surprised how shot or how fatigued individuals will get because their body is not accustomed to maintaining this position here while their legs are working. It's surprisingly fatiguing in the midsection. And again, right, it's just getting or encouraging their body in a subconscious way to stabilize in the position that they need to be able to perform in. So that's it for that's it for the rant on core training. Again, not trying to bash anybody's theories out there. I do understand that within the industry as a whole, that using the term core is a much simpler term. But again, when we're talking about core training as an actual exercise and working it into a program, I'm of the mindset that everything that we do should be core training. Whatever the movement is that you should be working on holding it or maintaining that position in the best manner that's optimal for your movement. And learning how to hold the body, how to manipulate your body in certain positions and against different forces. Again, so it's applicable back to your competitive movements. So that's it for today. Again, if you haven't already, check out our KG to KM squad. just our exclusive group that's getting a lot of extra help and resources on their training. We'll have another huddle coming up on actually update this week. The huddle or the team huddle on Thursday is being moved to Friday. Got another event on Thursday that I needed to jump in on, and then hopefully, just got to update. Hopefully, a new phone comes in this week, and I'll be able to get that updated, and then we can get back to our Instagram posts a little bit easier, and also get back on Instagram Live. So apparently the 4-year-old smartphone software is just not able to keep up with the current demand. So but thanks to everybody for jumping in, for watching this, whether it's live or after the fact. As always, if you have any questions, leave comments, send us a message, send us an email. Um, Always looking for suggestions and ideas. And yeah, stay with it, stay safe, keep working.